Hello, hello, hello. I am the Linux Mench. Well, this past Wednesday, I did a video on DWM, and it was my first video on DWM. And in fact, I'm new to DWM, so just in case you didn't watch that video, I've been playing around with DWM for a few weeks now, for the first time. And I did my very first video on it this past Wednesday. And since then, I've been playing around with it some more. I've changed some of my configuration files. I've changed some things about it. I've learned more about it. And I installed DWM on my main production computer. In fact, I'm recording in DWM right now. And I also installed DWM on another real bare metal computer I'm using in my home. So right now I have DWM installed on two bare metal computers. And of course, this is one of them. So I'm going to talk a bit more about it and a bit more about what I've learned and what I've changed. So let's get to it. So like I already mentioned in my introduction, my real bare metal computer, the one I do all my recording in, is DWM. And what I'm going to do is, before I go into a virtual machine, let's open up a terminal. Now, of course, DWM, the mouse, it's all keyboard driven. I mean, you can use your mouse when you're in Firefox or PCman FM or other programs that support the mouse, but the mouse doesn't work in the main part of the program, except for, well, we can change workspaces. See, now we're on workspace 4, now we're on workspace 1, okay? So I'm going to open up a terminal, which is super key enter. Well, in the default DWM, it's Alt enter, but I changed it to super key enter. I'm going to do a neo fetch. And my window manager is DWM. And it stands for Dynamic Window Manager. And of course, we could clear the screen. We could do a fast fetch. It comes down a lot faster, eh? And of course, we can see I'm in DWM. And look at this. My terminal is ST. Now, if you watched the video from last Wednesday, you'll see that I downloaded ST. I didn't like it. So I made Xterm my default terminal. And of course, if you've been following my channel, you know that Xterm is my favorite terminal emulator. And I use Xterm in all my videos and in all my installations. So when I was doing my video on Wednesday, if you watched it, you'll notice that I installed ST, and of course, ST stands for Simple Terminal. And that's the terminal that the Suckless people made that works with DWM. Now, it doesn't come with DWM. You have to install it. But anyways, when I opened it up, I didn't like it. I didn't like the way the font looked or the way it was working. So I made Xterm my default terminal. I went into the configuration file and made Xterm my default terminal emulator. But since I made the video on Wednesday, I've been playing around with ST, learning how to use it, and I changed it so the way I like it, and I made it my default terminal. So when I hit super key enter, ST opens up. And in fact, I think I like ST better than Xterm. And like I said, this is my bare metal computer, my main production computer, and I'm using ST now. And you don't have to use ST with DWM. You can use Xterm or Alacrity or any other terminal, and you can use ST with the awesome window manager or Qtile or any other window manager for that matter. Okay, and you can see right here, it's ST, right? Now, if I still want to use Xterm, I could open up, hit the super key and hit the P, and it brings up D menu on the top. I could type in Xterm, hit enter, and now we're in Xterm. And how you would know is right down here. See, it says Xterm. Now, if I close it and do mod key enter, you can see here, it says I'm in ST. And I'm going to CD into builds. And in my builds folder, I have two folders, one called DWM and one called ST. I'm going to CD into ST. And in ST, I also have a folder called patches. So I'm going to CD into patches, ls it. So I have one patch in my ST. Let's just call it simple terminal. It sounds better. So I have one patch in my simple terminal, and it's a scroll back patch, because when you install default simple terminal, if you bring down a list or you have a lot on your page, you can't scroll back. And that's a hassle, especially when I'm doing an upgrade, because this is Arch Linux, by the way. And if I'm doing an upgrade and there's a lot of upgrade, before I say yes, I want to see the whole list of what's being updated. And sometimes you have to scroll back because the list is so big. Well, I couldn't scroll back, but with this patch, you can scroll back. Then I'm going to CD out of there. So in builds, let's go. I have a DWM folder. Let's just CD into DWM. ls it. Let's CD into the patches. Let's ls it. So in my DWM folder, I have two patches. One is the patch for my auto start, which I showed how to install it and configure it and get it up and running in my video last Wednesday. But since I made my video, I installed this patch here, DWM status all monitors. And what I found was, now I didn't notice this when I made the video last week, because I made my video on a virtual machine. And my virtual machines only work on one monitor. But in my bare metal machine, this machine I'm running right here, I have two monitors hooked up. And this is the machine that I do my recording on. My recording, my editing, it's the machine I make my videos on. And it's my main machine for everything else as well. I have two monitors. So when I moved my mouse to the other monitor, the bottom bar followed it. And so did the clock. And then the clock would be on the other monitor. And then when I moved my mouse back to this monitor, the clock would be back here. The time and the clock would be moving back and forth. And for starters, it was really irritating. And secondly, I thought, well, when I'm making my videos, people are going to see the time and the clock disappear and then come back as I move my mouse. Because when I'm making my videos, of course, I'll go to the other screen to look up something. You probably can't notice it, but I do. Or I'll go to the other screen to put the video on pause. And I use the other monitor, even though my recorder isn't recording the other monitor. So you're going to see the clock and the time disappearing. Plus, even when I'm not making my videos, I like the date and the clock to be on both monitors. So if I'm doing something in full screen on this monitor, I always have the time over there on the other monitor, and I can see what it is. So it was kind of driving me crazy. And it doesn't do that in the awesome window manager or Qtile window manager, but it was doing that in here. Not because there was a bug, it's just because the way the default system works. So I installed this patch in my bare metal computer. So it's status all monitors. So now the bottom bar, the date and the clock are always on both monitors. Okay, so I only have two patches. Now, I watched a lot of videos on DWM, videos on Linux YouTubers that I watch all the time, and other Linux tubers who I never heard of. But when I was looking up stuff for DWM, their videos came across my screen. And a lot of people are saying you shouldn't use too many patches because sometimes your DWM system can break. So for that reason, I only have these two patches, and I didn't need any other patches for now. I really don't need any other patches. It's working fine like this, and my simple terminal is working fine with the one patch. Okay. Now I did have to install other programs. I installed dmenu, xset, xroot file, and of course I had to install ST, but those other programs I had to install to help DWM run properly. I did that in my other video, so I'm not going to show you how to do that again. I don't want this video to be exactly the same as my last one. So I have, like I said, I have 2 patches in DWM and I have 1 patch in Simple Terminal. I realized when I was editing my video from last Wednesday, I didn't show or talk about anything about workspaces. And the workspaces are pretty much the same as they are in the Awesome Window Manager or Qtile. And it's, of course, DWM is a tiling window manager. Well, actually, it's a dynamic window manager. That's why it's called DWM, Dynamic Window Manager. So let's just open up a terminal. Let's say we open up another terminal. And we open up another one. So now I have 3 terminals. Open up another one. So now I have 4 terminals. All right, actually, you know what? Let's open up Firefox. Okay, so now we have 2 open. And let's open PCman FM. So there. So now I have 3 things opened. I have PCman FM on the main. I have Firefox here, and I have my terminal there. And I could open up something else. Let's open up Rhythmbox. There it is there. Okay, now we have 4. Okay, so that's how it works. And let's close Rhythmbox. I don't want that. And let's close PCman FM. So now I have my terminal and I have PCman FM. I could use the mouse to work between each one. Okay. Or I could use the mod key and the J to jump. And you know what? Let's just close PCman FM. Let's just open up 2 terminals. So I can use the mouse will activate which window I'm working in. Or I could do mod key jump. Okay. And it puts the cursor on the tiling window I want to work in. Whoops. And I could use the mod key H to change the size and the mod key L to go back. See? So that's tiling window managers. And it's pretty much the same in Qtile, a little bit different in Qtile and the Awesome Window Manager. And as far as the tiling window manager goes, I don't usually work in more than 2. I mean, you could have, like I said, you could have 3 or 4, but hardly ever do that. At the most, I only use 2. And the reason why is that there's 9 workspaces, right? So if I want to do something, a lot of times I just jump to another workspace, right? And open up whatever it is I want to open up in. And because I have 2 monitors, I actually have 18 workspaces. So there's 9 workspaces by default, but because I have 2 monitors, I have 18 workspaces. So like I said, hardly ever do I use more than 2 tiling in 1 workspace. And that's how it works. Now, let's say I want to move. So we're on workspace 1. Let's say I want to move this to workspace 4. I could hold down the mod key and just use my mouse. Okay, so now we're on workspace 4. Or I could hold down the shift and the mod key and type in the 1, and it moves it to 1. But it's just as easy to use the mouse. Mod key, let's put it on 6. Now we're on 6. Okay. So that's just a brief look at the tiling part of it. And and also, like I said, for ST, I installed, like I said, I made ST my main terminal emulator instead of Xterm, and I did that after I made the last video. And in ST, I put that patch in, it's called the scroll back patch. So let's do history 1, okay? So with this patch, if you hold down the shift and do page up and down, so you see at the top here, it's number 2521, okay? So if I hold the shift button down and hit page up, so you see 521 is at the bottom now, right? If I do shift button and page up again. So now we see 2443 is at top. Hit it again. 2443 is at the bottom. So it's not over scrolling. You're not missing anything. You're not scrolling so fast that you're missing stuff. So I really like this patch. I like the way it works. Shift, and I think you have more control over this than you do with the scroll wheel. Now, of course, the scroll wheel isn't working in ST. There is a patch for the scroll wheel, but I didn't install it because I like the way this patch works. I think you have more control. You're not over scrolling and you're not missing anything. So you see 2405 is at the top, shift, page up, 2405 is at the bottom. So we're not over scrolling, we're not missing anything. And of course you could do shift page down if you need to go back down. So it should bring the 2405 to the top. And there it is. Shift page down, goes down a page. Shift page up, goes up a page. I really like this patch. It was easy to install. I didn't have any trouble with it, and it just worked right out of the box. So I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to go to my virtual machine, and I'm going to make it full screen. So this is the virtual machine I made on Wednesday that I used for my video, and I haven't done anything to it. I haven't made any changes in it except well, just before turning the camera on today, I did an update because there was an Arch Linux update. There was a bunch of files to update. It updated the kernel and I did a reboot. That was the only change I made. So when I made my video on last Wednesday, and on the video, I opened up ST, it was like that. I thought, oh, how can you read that? Now, on the default ST, if you hold down the shift and the control key, you can, and hit the page up, you can make it larger. But I still didn't like the font. And I tried changing the font, but I didn't like the way it looked. Then I figured out how to change it. So we'll just use Xterm for now. So I'm in Xterm. You can see down here I'm in Xterm. So what I did was I went into CD, builds, CD, ST, Vim, and I did a sudo vim config.h, put my password in. And what I tried doing on Wednesday in the video, or last week, is I went here and I changed this number 12 to 16. Or actually, I think I ended up changing it to 22. And it wasn't looking nice in the terminal. An M looked like an N, and there was spacing in the middle of the words. And I didn't like the way it looked. So I ended up making Xterm my default terminal and saying, forget ST, I'm just going to make Xterm my default terminal for DWM. But since I made the video, I realized changing this to 22 isn't going to make it look like my Xterm terminal. And then I realized, this after I made the video, I realized, why don't I just change the font altogether and put in the same font that I'm using in Xterm? Ugh. I don't know why I didn't think of that before. And I just changed the font exactly to the way it is in Xterm, and I don't know why I didn't think of that before. Mono space, colon, style equals bold, size equals 15. Okay, and I save the file and sudo make clean install and close it. Now let's open ST, and there it is. Looks like my Xterm. So that was the only change that I made to simple terminal. Oh no, and I added the patch. And well, if you want to see how I added the patch, I did that in my last video. Oh no, I didn't. I didn't do an ST patch in my last video. So let's do CD. Let's CD into builds, ST. I'm going to make directory called patches. Now I showed how to install a patch in my last video, but not this patch. So let's just do this. Let's open up Firefox. Let's go to DWM. Let's go to ST. Let's go to patches. Let's scroll down to scroll back. We want to scroll back one. Now there's a lot of different patches in the scroll back. I just used this top one, the very first one. And it tells you right here, the way to use it is to hold the shift and the page up and the page down. So I right click this one, save link as, and it's automatically going to go to my downloads folder. But I'm going to change, I'm going to go home, builds, ST, patches, and then I'm going to save it. Okay, now we can close our terminal. Sorry, we can close Firefox. And let's go back to my terminal. Let's CD into patches. Let's ls it to see if it's there, and it is. So what we could do is test a patch before we install it. CD out of the patches. So I'm in my builds ST folder. I don't want to be in the patch folder. Okay, then I'm going to type in patch, dry run, patches, and I'm going to put the name of the file in there, like that. And it's showing that this patch is going to be successful. This was just a test, it's not installed. So it's showing everything succeeded. There was no problems with the patch. So now I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to install it. I'm going to do patch P1, and that's a 1 and not an L. It's not a lowercase l, it's a 1. It's a P1. Patches and the file. Okay. And it's installed. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete my H file. So let's do remove sudo rm by force config.h. Put my password in. And now I'm going to make, oh, and I'm going to have to put the font back in. Okay. Make, I'm going to do sudo make clean install. Now I'm going to vim. I'm going to sudo vim into config.h. And yeah, I'm going to have to fix this again. Mono space style equals bold, size equals, I'm going to make this 16, not 15. Go 16. Let's save it. And let's make clean install again. Let's get out of there. And let's reopen up the terminal. So I made a mistake in there, and I'm going to type in my password. And I got to do size equals 16. Now I'm going to rebuild this again, and I'm going to close it, and I'm going to reopen it, and there we go. So that's how I changed the font in ST. And we also added a patch. So let's see if our patch is working. So let's do history. Let's see if we can get a full page of history. Okay, so you see 177 is at the top. So I'm going to hold down the shift and do page up, and let's see if it's working. And there it is. Now we see 177 is at the bottom. Let's do another page up. Shift, page up. 113 is at the top. So you see it's working. So that's how I changed ST. It's how I made the font look like the way I like it and to look like the way it does in Xterm. And that's how I got scroll back working in ST. So I really do like ST, and I made it my default terminal. Whereas in my video on Wednesday, I made Xterm the default terminal. Now, another thing I changed was this. We made a file called .dm, a folder, and in that folder is my auto start script. So let's vim into it. Vim auto start. And this was the way I made the time work. So line number 10, that sets the clock and the time in our status bar. And it's always going to be working. It's always going to be up. every time we log in and out of the system. And I didn't make up that line. I copied it from some website somewhere, and I don't remember if I copied it from someone's video or from some website. To tell you the truth, it's like a week and a half ago when I found it. No, it was last weekend, because I was fiddling around with the clock and I couldn't get the clock and the date and the time working the way I liked it. And I found that line somewhere and it worked, so I used it. But there's a better one. So I'm going to delete this line and I'm just going to go up, just leave some space. You don't have to leave space, but I'm going to do that. And I'm going to type in this. While true, do exset root name $, bracket, date, bracket, oops, and we don't need the second do here, oops, like that. And I like this command better because at least when you look at this command, you know what it's doing. It's setting in the date. And it's going to set the date, the clock and the date to look exactly the way it is right now. But I just like this command better. I think it's easier to type. If you're putting the command in, it's easier to type than that other one. And at least when you look at it and you go back into this file to think, what is that command? You know what it is. It's the date command. So I made a mistake here. This has to be a semicolon, not a full colon. Okay. And that's why it says DWM 6.5, because I didn't type the command in right. So let's save it. Let's close the terminal. Let's log out. Let's clear the screen. Let's do a start X. There you are. So now everything is fixed. The clock looks the same as it did before, right? My ST is working. Let's do CD DWM Vim auto. So there it is there. There's the date command. Now, if you downloaded my DWM configuration files last week, I've made changes in them. So you might want to do a git pull to get all the changes I made. And this is included. This auto start file with the proper date in there is included in that command. Now, of course, for this auto start file to work, you have to install a patch. You have to install the auto start patch to DWM, and I showed how to do it in my last video on DWM, the one I made last Wednesday. Okay. Now I'm just going to go back to my bare metal computer. And now we're back in my bare metal computer, and I'm going to open up my file. And notice I'm using ST, my bare metal computer. I'm going to make that a little larger. And to make it larger, it's Shift Control page up and down. So what I'm going to do is CD into builds DWM. And I'm going to vim into config.h. And I'm going to go to the top. So since last Wednesday, I added in some more commands. Well, of course, and last Wednesday, my main machine here, this computer wasn't running DWM. So now I have ST as my main terminal. That's in line 61. Line 62, I had Firefox in my last video. I think I put PCMan FM in my last video. But I also programmed on line 64 OBS Studio, GIMP, Kdenlive, Ramina, and Slock. So to open up D menu is mod key P. Mod key return opens up my terminal, which is ST now. Mod key F opens up Firefox. Mod key control P opens up PCMan FM. Mod key control O opens up OBS. Mod key control K opens up Kdenlive. Mod key G opens up GIMP. Mod key R opens up Ramina. And mod key S locks it. Now I wonder what's going to happen if I lock this while I'm recording. So let's go to another workspace, because right now we are in my bare metal computer. So let's do mod key S is going to lock it. And now it's locked. I hope the recording didn't stop. Now, if I type in the wrong password, it's going to go red. Watch. Hit enter. I typed in the wrong password, it goes red. So I'm going to know if someone's been trying to get into my computer when it was locked. Now let's type in the correct password. There we go. And it's still recording. So before I was using Slock, and Slock makes the screen go black and it says password. So it gives you a black screen and it says password at the top. So the person trying to break in, they know it has to be type in their password. And if they type in the wrong password, you just get an error. But I like Slock. So Slock is another program made by the Suckless developers of DWM, but it doesn't come installed with DWM. You have to install it yourself. Slock I installed from the official Arch repository, so I didn't have to build it. So I've switched my main computer to Slock because I really like it. So we see here, lot 82, mod key S turns on Slock. Now, another thing I did was, and this is a little bit of a repeat of my last video. So what I'm going to do is, and of course, this is back to my bare metal computer. I'm going to open up another terminal, and I'm going to make that a bit larger. And I'm going to go to CD into builds, DWM. And I'm going to open up this one, config.f. Okay, vim config.def is default. The def stands for default. That's the default configuration file. So let's go to the top. So the fonts. So when you install a default configuration file, everything is small and the status bar is on the top. So I changed this top number, right, to make it larger. That's line 8. So you can see it's 10. I changed it to make, I can't remember what I made it. Well, let's go back to my other one. So I changed the font to bold. So on line 8, I changed the font to bold size 14. The next line, which is D menu font, I also changed to bold size 18. So if we go back to the default configuration file, it's not bold and both fonts are number 10. Okay, so in my configuration file, I changed both to bold and went to 14 and went to 18 instead of 10. Then in the default one, on line 7, this is the default one. If you go here, this is a 1, and that puts the bar on top, and the bar is on top by default. If you change this 1 to a 0, it means the bar is on the bottom, and I like the bar on the bottom. So if you go into my configuration file, see line 7, top bar equals 0. 0 means bottom bar. So I changed that to a 0, put the bar on the bottom. And of course, some of this is a repeat from my last video. So you see line 61, it says ST. So by default, that line is there and it says ST. But in my last video, I didn't like ST, so I changed this to Xterm. And if you change that to Xterm and rebuild the system, Xterm will be your default shell. And when you hit the mod key enter, it's going to open up Xterm. But now that I like ST, I changed it back from Xterm to ST on line 61. So when I hit mod key enter, it opens up ST, simple terminal, instead of Xterm. Okay. And the way my key bindings are working is you have to put it in here first. First, you have to make a line in here. So you're going to make it exactly like that. Okay. And then here, you're going to put in the app that you want to open. Then after it's in here, you're going to go down and you're going to put them in here. Now, you want to make sure there's no conflict. So if you're telling the system to open an app with a particular letter, like mod key A or mod key B or mod control A or B or mod shift A or B, you have to make sure it's not in this list because you don't want there to be a conflict. And if it's a conflict, you can either delete the line that you don't want, or you could change the line. Like let's say the line is mod key K. So mod key K is to focus stack. Let's say I want to use mod key K to open Kdenlive. So what I could do is change this mod key K to be mod key pipe control mask. Okay, I could do that. Now, I don't know why they have a mask here, but that's just the way the program works. So for instance, line 71, if I hit mod key control K, it's going to open up Kdenlive. I don't know why the mask is there. It's just the way the programming language works, or the way the configuration file works. I don't know why it's there. So I put mod key pipe control mask, put a K there, and I put Kdenlive there. So it's pretty simple. I mean, I don't want to start redoing all this stuff. So here, I put line 66 has Kdenlive. I just copied lines, right? So I don't retype all this stuff out. I just paste it in. And then I change what needs to be changed here, and I change what needs to be changed there. Okay, then the same thing here. I just copy it. I don't type it out. So if I'm doing one that's just a mod key, I'm going to paste it in there and change the letter here and change the letter there. Okay, and I'm going to delete that because I don't want two Firefoxes in there. And if I'm doing one with a mod key control, I'm going to yank it there. I'm going to put it there. And then I'm going to change the letter P here. And I'm going to change the name PCManFM. Okay. Now, if I want to do, let's say I wanted to do a mod key shift, what I would do is I would just copy this one, paste it in, change this control mask to shift mask. And notice the control is capital C and the mask is capital M. I would put the letter there that's going to open up the application, and I type in the application there. Okay, now I'm going to just get out of there because I made changes to that file. I don't want them to stay in there. And let's go back in. So we go to, it's line 40. Well, I added lines, right? Let's go to the default. Let's type in mod. So here in the default, in line 48, notice here it says mod 1. So the default, the mod key is the alt key. If you want the mod key to be the Windows super key or the Windows key or the super key, then you're going to change that to a 4. So that's what I did. I changed it to a 4. Now you don't uncomment it like you would in other configuration files. Like, you know, the hashtag in other configuration files means it's deactivated and you have to delete the hashtag. Well, in this configuration file, you don't do that. Don't delete this hashtag. This is already activated. So if you want to change the mod key to the super key, the Windows super key, change that to a 4. Okay. So now I'm back in my virtual machine. So what you might want to do is, if you already downloaded my GitLab repository the other day, you might want to do a git pull because this week I've been making changes in it. So cd into Mench, do a git pull, and now it's updated it. Now cd into arch, ls it, cd into DWM. So now we're in the DWM folder of my Mench GitLab repository, and ls it. Let's ls it. Let's vim auto start. So now you see my auto start file has the new date format in it, which is really not new. It's just new for me. And let's vim into config.h. And let's see what I have in here. So you see I have all my commands here. So you can use my configuration file if you want. If you don't want to make changes yourself from default, you can use mine. You can download it. And Slock was the last change that I made. And let's just see if I included in this one. Yes. So I changed my configuration file to be ST as the default terminal. And the last thing I changed was I added Slock to it. Mod key S will lock the screen, but of course you have to download Slock. And that's it. In this video, I showed you a bit more how DWM works and briefly showed you how the tiling part of the window manager works because I didn't show that in my other video. And I talked about some changes I made in it since my last video that I made on last Wednesday. And I also talked about how I changed the fonts in Simple Terminal to make it look like my Xterm, and how I installed a patch for Simple Terminal so that scrolling back works. And I talked about how I really like Simple Terminal now, and I've made Simple Terminal my main terminal. And I also talked about how I installed DWM on my main computer, and I've been running it on my main computer. I also have it installed on another bare metal computer that I use, and how I really like DWM. I also talked about how when I installed DWM on my main computer, the bottom status bar would only be on one monitor depending where my mouse was, and how I installed a patch so that the status bar would always be on both monitors. I also showed how I changed the command to format the clock. Now the clock and the time look the same as they did in my last video, but I changed the command so that it's more obvious what the command is and it's easier to type in. And I also showed a little bit more how to change the main configuration file and how to add key bindings. Finally, I'm going to have to say that I think DWM is a really good window manager. Like I said, I'm using it on my main computer and I'm using it on one of my other computers. I think DWM is a great window manager. I think ST, Simple Terminal, is a great terminal, and I'm really enjoying them. Now, I do have to say that if you've never used a window manager, probably your first window manager might want to be the Awesome Window Manager, because the Awesome Window Manager is more user-friendly, and I think it's just easier for a person that's brand new to window managers. But if you've used the Awesome Window Manager, and if you've used Qtile, go ahead and try DWM. And another thing I like about DWM over Qtile is that in Qtile, if your mouse hits one of these workspaces, the number moves. So like this, you could accidentally move it. So this number 3 ends up between 5 and 6. Now there might be a way to lock it in Qtile, but I never figured it out. So that used to drive me crazy because my other computer that has DWM in it, it had Qtile in it. The other computer was running Qtile all the time. And every once in a while, my mouse would slip and the 3 would move over there, or the 2 would move between the 7 and the 8, and you would have to fiddle around with it to fix it. So in that computer is running DWM as well. So overall, I like DWM and I like Simple Terminal. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I am the Linux Mench.